All right. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us on our Raising Healthy Kids Naturally workshop. I am so excited to share with you all today and hopefully get you guys to see some missing links that you may not have even realized are there. And for sure, I'm here to give you guys a ton of encouragement and love for all the work and all the things that you're already doing, that you're doing currently in your health, in your family's health, in order for you, your families, your kiddos to be able to live the healthiest life as they possibly can. Obviously, today's talk is about doing things naturally, to look at health through more of a different lens, different than the traditional medical route of, hey, your kiddo's sick? It's fine. Take this synthetically created medication to help with, but realistically just cover up the symptoms that they're coming in with and not get to the root cause. Take this medication and put it as a band-aid. But what we want to do today is instead change how we're looking at, change the lens that we're looking at this through more of a wellness and holistic lens, giving you some tools that you as a parent, as an aunt, uncle, a grandparent, can use in your tool belt to help your kids, your nieces, your nephews, your grandchildren grow the best they possibly can. Now, many of you guys are doing a ton of these things already. And what we need to do is look at the sequence that you're doing these things at, because that's going to be a thing that really matters here. And what we would talk about in this workshop a little bit is that sequence. Putting the sequence together properly so that you get the most of all the work you're already putting in, and to add some things into that sequence to really up the game that you're already doing. So give you guys tips and tricks to build your kiddo's nervous system up, to build those systems up, to build the development up in your children, in your families, as naturally as we possibly can. Now, when we talk about health in our life, there's really the big picture is there's four main things that our bodies should be doing, or that we should be doing or looking at in order to get the most out of our health. Our bodies and our nervous system are so complex, but if you really look at it and break it down, they can be incredibly and extraordinarily simple. But sometimes the issue is it can be hard to do the simple things. We need these four things. We need these four things working properly in the proper sequence in order to have full health, in order to have full life in our families and in our kids. And one of those things, the top thing, is having a clear and present nervous system, a clear and present brain and body connection, because that's the boss. The brain and nervous system control every single part of your body. Most of you are already working on these four things, but some of you may only be working on three, and that's okay. We are here to help you to be able to process through and continue working so that we can get to the next one. And we can work on the next one, so we can work on all four and really be able to really create that core or that foundation of health in your entire families. And what I really want to continue doing is encouraging you, because you are probably doing most of these things, or at least you're doing part of most of these things. These things that your body really need for health, or your families, your kiddos need for health. And what I want to outline here is 7 steps that you can work on, or 7 steps that you can work towards in order to be able to have a healthy life. So steps 1 through 3, we all know these. They're eating, sleeping, pooping. But what I really want to do is unpack why these 3 basic steps are so important. The way our bodies are wired is that we're wired to be able to hit certain developmental milestones or certain developments at certain times, but more importantly, in certain sequences. Between the ages of 0 to 4 months, we should be doing these things, eating, sleeping, pooping on repeat, and not a whole lot else. So what we're looking at here is there are certain certain places neurologically, and you don't need to know this whole chart, but this is where neurologically based chiropractor comes into play. But there are certain places neurologically that set these first three steps up with a super strong foundation. These steps of eating, sleeping, pooping. But these steps, not only set up these steps, but longer term development. Between 0 to 4 months, our babies don't really have a great immune system. They don't have a big immune system on their own because they're getting it from mom through breast milk most of the time. And then when they get to 4 to 6 months, that's when they really start moving. They're no longer that floppy, soggy, saggy, sleepy baby. And this is where our next step of movement comes into play. And I'll get to that in a second. But what I really wanted to hit hard here is that there are certain spots that we need to have active in our nervous system. C1, C2, T2, T6, T12, S2. All these areas have certain functions, and they're so important, especially for this foundational part of our nervous system. C1, for example, the vagus nerve is up here in the neck, right around C1. The vagus nerve is the biggest brake pedal in the body. It goes to our gut, it goes to our heart, it goes to our lungs. It helps shift our body out of this anxiety, gas pedal stuck on mode to more of a rest, digest, heal part of our nervous system. When we have interference or subluxation up in the upper part of the neck and our vagus nerve isn't firing, isn't working like we want it to, then we're not able to shift into that brake pedal side of the nervous system. It's like a bear is always in the room for these people. And our body gets so stuck in this sympathetic dominant state of gas pedal stuck on that, of course, you don't need to eat properly. You don't need to latch properly and drink breast milk properly when there's a bear in the room. You don't need to digest your food properly when there's a bear in the room. You don't need to sleep when there's a bear in the room. All you need to do is fight, flight, or freeze. And that's because our body's so ramped up in that gas pedal. So that's why it's so important to have these areas, especially on this first slide here that I have, but throughout the whole neurospinal system, have these areas clear of nervous system interference so that your bodies can grow and they can heal and they can develop the way our bodies were created to be able to do. And this is why it's so important to be able to see a neurologically based chiropractor because they're going to be able to help you, help your kiddo, help your family identify where there's interference to your nervous system so we can truly set up this most important foundation of our nervous system and health that we can build on and move through as we go along. Now, when I talk about step 4 and movement mattering most, I mean movement matters most when we get to this next step of development and really continuing on the stages of that foundation that we're working on building, that sequence. After eating, sleeping, pooping, we have the motor side of the nervous system, movement. And that matters so much and it's so important for brain development. Like I said, around 4 to 6 months, babies are no longer that floppy baby that's always sleeping. This is where step 4 comes into play. And here's where we are really going to dig in a little bit because movement really does matter most. It matters so much for brain development, but also as we move through the list of development, this sequence of development. Like I said, before 4 months, babies are just sleeping all the time. That's usually what they're supposed to be doing, at least. But then we get to that 4 month sleep regression, which is a very real thing. But why does this happen? Is because babies they're able to start picking up their heads. And that really activates the eyes. So now babies can start to see farther. And they wake up in the crib, they pick up their head, their eyes are activated, and they're like, hey, man, mom's not in here, and it's dark. It's kind of scary. I really need to start to call for mom, and this is where that crying comes into play. The next step is the immune system. That's really starting to develop here as well. So when they aren't moving properly, their heads aren't moving side to side properly or picking up properly or with good control, we aren't moving at a critical stage for drainage to happen in the body. Like when you think about drinking water, and when you're going on a hike and you're drinking water, you drink water that's running, not the stagnant water, because stagnant water is gross. It's got bacteria and junk. We're meant to be able to move and flow as well. No movement means there's no growth happening. So starting to drain in sinuses and lungs, and then the gut then starts to really experience that drainage from the environment and starts to experience the environment on its own for the first time. So now you get more ear infections, lung issues. Kids are prescribed with antibiotics and steroids for these symptoms, which are happening in 3, 4. But what they really started to happen was because of the motor issues. There was not movement happening. But then as we develop down that path, we start to end up with speech and behavioral issues at 4 to 6 years old. But they didn't start with speech and behavioral issues for the most part. Almost always, they're starting at the immune level or even before with movement or lack of eating, sleeping, pooping, and running behind at these first 3 or 4 levels that really lead to this cascade of developmental delays where 6, 7, 8 is where things are starting to be looked at. Go do a therapy for this, a therapy for that, speech, emotional, OT, but the motor, the immune system, that needs to be looked at first and cleared out to be able to build down that full cascade. Now, while we're talking about milestones, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the changes that the CDC has made to developmental milestones a couple years ago, because they can make a huge impact on our kids' development moving forward. They've taken crawling out of the milestones, and what these are changes are going to be doing is it's going to be pushing back more and more and more, and what it's going to be doing is it's going to keep happening because when we aren't seeing these milestones and they're getting delayed, the whole cascade is also going to be delayed because of how neurologic development happens in our body. Crawling no longer a milestone. Walking moved to 18 months. Talking pushed back 3 to 6 months. Just because we say that we're delaying these or we're getting these milestones, that doesn't mean the body stops developing and body stops growing neurologically. Because the way that our body works, the body keeps developing on and on and on. So when they start crawling around typically that 12 or 3 to 6 month range or 6 plus month range is typically when they're also starting to eat more solid foods. And movement is super important to help that gut digestion. And if they're moving, then they're typically also playing with more things and getting into more things, maybe more germs, more things a little dirtier, playing in the dirt more. But that's a natural part of development, a natural part of immune system development, a natural part of gut development, and a natural part of that motor immune complex development. The earlier they're exposed to these things, not being too early, but the earlier they're being exposed to these things through proper milestones, the better it's going to be for their immune system development. We were built to experience these things in that way. So, what's truly concerning about the changes that are being made to these developmental milestones and to these guidelines are that if movement is delayed, then our kids are also not going to have they're not comfortable with movement. Immune system is also going to be delayed. And when we get behind there, then gut's going to be delayed. And then when we get behind there, then we have the speech, the behavioral, the social. All these things get pushed back and all these things get delayed. And it's so hard and it's so much more difficult to get these back on track. This is why movement is so important and why we track movement and ask so many questions because especially between 6 years to about 6 months to about a year, it's so important to know because we know the immune system is going to follow. We know that the gut follows. We know that sensory is going to follow. And we know that speech and behavior are going to follow that because that's how developmental development works. So when we're skipping milestones or delaying milestones or skipping them entirely, all these things are going to be changing and all these things are going to be pushed back as well. This is why sequence matters too, not just timing, but the sequence of things. Because it's not just a timing thing of crawling. If we skip an entire sequence, it's going to throw that entire cascade off, which is why we really need to look into these guidelines and not just take them as face value. Now, as we move on to step 5, we're talking about the immune system and we're talking about kicking the sick. And because we're talking about doing things naturally, kicking the sick without the use of drugs. And I love I love this slide because none of us really learn this in school, in my opinion. We learn about geometry, you learn about Pythagorean theorem, you learn all of this fun stuff and important stuff. And if your high school science class was anything like mine, you learn all about bird calls as well. And I don't think that I actually learned this actual true immunology until after school or in chiropractic school. So over the next couple slides, this is going to be your non-boring immunology crash course in about 3 minutes or so. And I think that we all have in our mind that fever, cough, germs, they're all bad. At some point, we've had that. If you look at all the kids' cartoons and things like that, they're always bad, right? Think about the Magic School Bus and Miss Frizzle. She's always battling the germs, shrinking the school bus down. So we start to think in our heads, even as kids, that fevers, coughs, and germs are all bad. But when we really start to dig in and find a different path and look through a different lens compared to that traditional medical model, and we really look at the research, we realize that not all exposure to those germs are truly bad. In fact, it's actually really good for our immune system. It's really good for our development. And it's really good to get that exposure even early on as kids, to have a pet, to eat the dirt, as Dr. Josh Axe says. It's a really great book to read there, and to really build up our immune system because it has a really great memory feature. Just like when you work out and go to the gym and you do the bicep workout the whole time and you keep working something, it builds that muscle. Our immune system is the same way, it builds that immune system. And then you look at fevers, and people get really scared of fevers, parents especially, and we think of them as really not a great thing. But again, if you take a deeper look and as you really start to study it, we see it as so much more of a beneficial process, like a cough in the body. Because today we want to shift that thought a little bit to taking some of those things that we may have always thought of as bad and taking them and saying, okay, what is my body, which is innately smart and innately intelligently created, doing in order to help me get through these things, in order to help me get through X, Y, or Z? And something that I would love all of you to take note of today, or to really look and take introspection in today, is have the conversation with yourself, with your spouse, with a family member. Am I suppressing the body, or do I support the body? And what we have found in our office over and over and over and over again is that the kids that I've seen getting sick all the time, they've been told to suppress it. They've been told to shut it down, to have the fever reducer, to clear this out, to do this, to do etc., and to do this outside in approach to suppress the body instead of using an inside out, above down, inside out, true neuroimmunological approach that says, how are we going to boost the body and how do we strengthen the body to be able to heal and grow itself? Now, I'm not saying here, don't go out and wash your hands ever. I'm saying maybe not use so much of the antimicrobial soap. Just plain soap and water is great. And hand sanitizer, don't overdo it on that because it's good to have germs. These aren't necessarily the best things for you long term. That's one of the things we really need to start and working towards. And with this next slide, we're going to look at a couple different parts of the nervous system. We have two main parts to our immune system. We have Th1, which are cells that are meant to get things out, the expressive part of our immune system. This is when your body gets a cough. You feel some aches in your body, your temperature rises, your body is trying to warm out and kick that sickness out. Hopefully, it's supposed to kick that sickness out quickly so your body can get it and get over it in just a couple of days. The opposite side of that is Th2 cells. These are cells that are constantly pushing sickness down. They're pushing things down, and for long enough that they tend to get more chronic. Now, neither side is great if you are stuck in them for too long, and that's an important factor there. Yes, we want to be able to kick things out and kick them out quickly, but we don't want TH1 to be always active and keep kicking every single thing out super fast, super quickly all the time. That's where autoimmune issues come in. That's where allergy issues come in. That's where asthma issues can also come in. That's constant stress to your immune system, that neuroimmunologic system. But we also don't want constant TH2 where that kid is chronically stuck, chronically sick, chronically stressed out either. So it's important to have balance or counterbalance to our system, and that's how we were created. We were created so incredibly complex, but also so simply to have two sides of our nervous system. And we have a built-in counterbalance and counter system to be able to process through this in our immune system and have that part of our system grow properly. So as I said before, the missing link that often gets overlooked is the nervous system, which is so important. And it's so detrimental that it's overlooked because the nervous system, like I said, right in the beginning, is the boss of every single part of the body. If our immune system is not communicating properly, most likely because our nervous system has interference where it's not communicating properly. We have parts to our nervous system, parts to our immune system that help with things like plumbing and drainage in our body, like in step four with movement. If we have issues with movement, specifically movement because there's interference to the nervous system, our body's not able to process through the plumbing and drainage of our body, where we get ear infections, sinus infections, and things like that. When we talk about drainage in the body, gravity matters, that's important, but what matters more is the movement around those areas. There's small muscles around the tubes in the ears that are supposed to be able to fire and fire in certain patterns based on their control through the nervous system that help to send that drainage and send those things through and clear everything out and clear that drainage out. It's not a horizontal ear issue why kids get ear infections. If that were the case, every single kid in the world would always have ear infections because ears are always horizontal and they start to then develop more vertically as we age. But the real issue with ear infections is most of the time an interference to the nervous system causing disruption between the brain and the body, sending signals to those small muscles around the ears through that vagus nerve, most likely. Though the immune system, the nervous system is also so important as we move through on the steps five part of the nervous system with the immune system, because that's where that counterbalance comes into play. Our body has built-in countermeasures to be able to balance out TH1 and TH2, and really harmonize the immune system as a whole. Step six to raising healthy kids naturally is to have that nature's medicine cabinet. We have four pillars that we want to have as a foundation first. That's sleeping well, that's exercise and play, that movement, removing as much toxins as we can, eating clean, having nice, healthy foods, getting adjusted by neurologically based chiropractors so that they can clear up interference to your nervous system and we have that healthy nervous system. So it's important to have those health pillars first and build that foundation. But then, as we clear that up and build those health pillars, it also can be so helpful to be able to have natural things in your cabinet to be able to boost these things. Top one is first, and then we have boosters that we could work on next. Things like eating whole foods, some probiotics, vitamins, minerals, fermented foods, fruits and vegetables. And then there's certain things that you can do and looking at specific symptoms. Again, you're looking at symptoms when we go this far down, but to help to relieve some symptoms in more of a natural way. And that's where this nature's medicine cabinet comes into play. I'm not going to be talking a ton on here. You can take a look at this picture if you're interested, or if you can't see it quite as clear, I can send you a picture of this. Just send us a message. But the biggest thing is having those top pillars first to be able to build on that because you can have all the best vitamins, all the best minerals, all the best fruits and vegetables that you want first. But if you're not moving well, you're not going to be able to digest those foods. If your brain is not sending signals properly to your stomach, to your gut, you're not going to get the most from those foods either. So that's where this is step 6, but it's part of the raising healthy kids naturally. This is part of the natural part of that as well. All right, and this is putting it all together because step 7 is the sequence of these things. Like I mentioned right away, most likely you are probably doing a lot of the things I already talked about, but are you doing them in the correct sequence? We need to have those healthy pillars first, and we need to have that sequence happening first. We need to have a balanced nervous system first and foremost to be able to process through every other part of the body. We need to be able to sleep. If we're not sleeping, we're not doing a basic function of the body, a basic function of the nervous system. We need to eat clean and healthy foods so that our body can have something to take down and something to build off. And we need to be able to move because movement matters most when we talk about development further along. And then we can bring in the boosters and builders from nature's medicine cabinet. And then we can use the immune fighters that work with the body and not working against the body. Things that we can do to help boost the body's natural responses and strengthen that instead of suppressing the things that our body is created to do and the things our body is doing naturally because your body is going to be the smartest doctor. Your body knows what to do in most cases. Sometimes it just needs a little help, and that's where we look at the pillars first. But then your body knows what to do. So trust it and trust that your body is doing what it was created to be able to do. Now, you know you're not going to get through a webinar with me without giving you practical action steps that you can take as soon as you're done watching this or as soon as you're done with the workshop for us. Action steps that you can take. Number 1, continue asking questions, continue following up with the right people in the right tribe to be able to set you up and set your family up on the path that you want. Do you want to go the full side of a crunchy granola family and do everything as natural as possible? Or do you want to be middling in, the center and dabble a little bit into this and a little into that? Or do you want to be all over on the traditional medical mindset? Wherever you choose to be on, continue to ask questions on that tribe and on that path so that you're still asking the right questions and you're still getting information and making a full informed choice on what you want to do with your health of your family, with the health of your kids, with the health of yourself. Number 2, following the action step or following the steps that outlined here. Like I said, like I have on the slide here, not following them perfectly because life is still going to happen and things are going to happen in your life that are going to cause you to misstep, but following them as consistently as possible. When you trip up, that's where that tribe is there to be able to help you. That's where we're here to be able to help you and be able to help you get back on track with the goals that you have for your health, the goals that you have for your family's health, the goals that you have for your kiddos' health and for your life. And so work on these steps, work on those 7 steps over a period of time consistently and that'll help your body to stay healthy and stay natural as much as you can. And then finally, come get scanned. Come get scanned here if you're close to us. Come get scanned at a neurologically based chiropractor in your area. If you're not in this area, and we have a pretty wide range here that we see people coming from, but if you're not in our area, us know. Let me know. Send us a message, comment below, and I will get you in contact with a neurologic chiropractor as close as I can to your area. But come get scanned here, and let's see what is going on in your nervous system. Let's see where there's interference to your nervous system that could be disrupting the normal signals on that chart right away early on in this presentation so that we can know where to build up your nervous system, where to clear out interference so that your brain and your body are communicating to their fullest extent to really start the foundation for health for your entire life and for your family's entire life.